worship you together and to learn from your word. God, we ask that tonight you just help us to connect with you on a very intimate level as we worship you in song, and help us to hear what you have to say to us as we study your word together. God, thank you so much for everything. In Jesus Christ, in name we pray. Amen.
It's like, oh.
Turned into wine, open the eyes of the blind. There's no one like you, none like you. Into the darkness you shine, out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Into the darkness you shine, out of the ashes we rise. There's no one like you, none like you. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. Our God is greater, our God is stronger. God, you are higher than any other. Our God is healer, awesome in power. Our God, our God. And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? And if our God is for us, then who could ever stop us? And if our God is with us, then what could stand against? Our God is greater, is alive. My God is alive. God, you are alive. Lost its power, death has lost its sting. From the grave you've risen victoriously. Sin has lost its power, death has lost its sting. From the grave you've risen victoriously. People in the world are selfish. Now let's narrow our scope a little bit. How many of you think there are people in the church who are just really selfish? And we won't talk about these people because chances are I'm going to know exactly who you're talking about. So yeah, there may be some people in the church that are selfish as well. In fact, there are. I won't say there are people in the church that are selfish. Here's what I'm going to ask you to do with questions. Write them down. We have group time at the end, and so we have time for all questions when we do group time. That's what the next section is for. So here we go. So there are selfish people in the world and culture. There are selfish people in the church. Now here's what I know for sure about you guys is none of you are ever selfish even a little bit. Right? None of us in this room are ever selfish. We never make selfish decisions. So here's what we're going to do. I'm actually going to teach you how to be selfish. All right? Can we do that?
Okay.
Can we do that? Here, these instructions are from WikiHow, so you can look it up online later if you want to, just how to be selfish. Just type it in on Google. It'll come up. Part 1 is you have to get your head right. You have to get in the game. You have to get in the zone. Redefine the word. Selfishness is not necessarily a bad thing. All right? Selfishness is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not using others. It's just being primarily concerned with what I want. It's not about hurting others or harming others. That just happens sometimes. Figure out who you are. What makes you happy? What makes you tick? What drives you? This is going to be the motivation behind every decision you make. What makes you happy? That's the motivation behind every decision you make.
Learn what's important to you and only pursue those things. Only go after what's important to you. Define your obstacles. If a person, place, or thing just isn't jiving with you, ditch it. Get rid of it. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. And finally, don't feel guilty, because happy people don't feel guilty. Guilt leads to unhappiness, and we don't want unhappiness in our lives, do we? No unhappiness. Part 2, just take care of yourself. Do what fulfills you. No need to waste time doing things you don't really care about, even if it might benefit others. You don't need those things. Take your battles. Sometimes you don't have to get what you want in order to get what you want. What? Sometimes you don't get what you want, but that doesn't mean you can't get what you want. Choose me time. Sometimes it really is best to just shut the world out and to have some well-deserved me time. Be proud of your accomplishments over everything else. Give yourself a pat on the back. After all, you deserve it. We all deserve it. Keep your feelings to yourself. Be selfish with those feelings. If you have a friend that's dragging you down, ignore them. No big deal. You don't need that kind of drama in your life. No drama. No drama. Part 3. Don't let others get in your way. Get rid of toxic friends. How many of you have a friend that's just toxic? Get rid of them. Oh, hey, what? Get rid of them. They don't deserve your time. They don't deserve your time. Don't ever sacrifice anything. Just compromise. If you're ready to go for a run and your friend comes up to you and they just really need to talk about something, hey, don't sit down and talk with them. Invite them to go on a run with you, and they can talk to you while you run. You don't have to sacrifice your run. Just compromise. Think before saying yes. Will this thing that you're agreeing to benefit you or not? Be selfish with your things. Don't share. Especially if you don't get anything in return. Why would you share if you don't get anything in return? That's crazy. And finally, the last thing listed on WikiHow is put yourself first in any relationship. If you're not happy, it won't last. That's the simple truth. This is crazy, right? Selfishness is not a good thing. Selfishness is not a good thing. In fact, we all know somebody who everything they do is about them, and all they do is sort of ruin the atmosphere, ruin everybody's lives around them. Selfishness is not a good thing in the world today. And tonight we're going to learn why our constant battle against selfishness is so important. We're going to learn why our battle against selfishness is so important. What you got, Cole? Numbers chapter 11, verses 1 through 15. You can look along in your student notes. You can look along on your devices. You can look along in your copy of Scripture. Numbers chapter 11, verses 1 through 15. Now the people began complaining openly before the Lord. By the way, this is when the Israelites are in the wilderness. This is after they sort of get going, after God gives them the basic laws that they're to follow. And this is while they're in the wilderness, when they get going as the first generation of people in the wilderness. Now the people began complaining openly before the Lord about hardship. When the Lord heard, his anger burned, and fire from the Lord blazed among them and consumed the outskirts of the camp. Then the people cried out to Moses, and he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So that place was named Taberah, because the Lord's fire had blazed among them. Contemptible people among them had a strong craving for other food. By the way, God was feeding them at this point. So all that was happening at this point was they began craving food that they didn't have. Contemptible people among them had a strong craving for other food. The Israelites cried again and said, "Who will feed us meat? We remember the free fish we ate in Egypt, along with the cucumbers, melons, leeks," which is a vegetable. If any of you have seen Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, there's a leek in the boat, but it's a vegetable, not an actual leek. Fish we ate in Egypt, along with the cucumbers, melons, leeks, onions, and garlic. But now our appetite is gone. There's nothing to look at but this manna. Now the manna resembled coriander seed, and its appearance was like that of bdellium. By the way, I have no idea what those things are. The people walked around and gathered it. They ground it on a pair of grinding stones or crushed it in a mortar, then boiled it in a cooking pot and shaped it into cakes. It tasted like a pastry cooked with the finest oil. By the way, what famous pastries do we have today that are cooked in oil?
Donuts.
Cinnamon rolls, donuts. So basically, in the wilderness, God was giving the Israelites donuts.
That's where it's at.
Now we're complaining about it. No. Pastries cooked with the finest oil. When the dew fell on the camp at night, the manna would fall with it. Moses heard the people, family after family, crying at the entrance of their tents. The Lord was very angry. Moses was also provoked. So Moses asked the Lord, "Why have you brought such trouble on your servant? Why are you angry with me? And why do you burden me with all these people? Did I conceive all of these people? Did I give birth to them?" Basically, he's saying, I'm not their father or their mother. Why should I have to take care of them? Carry them at your breast as a nursing woman carries a baby to the land that you swore to give their fathers. Where can I get meat to give all of these people? For they are crying to me, give us meat to eat. I can't carry all these people by myself. They are too much for me. If you are going to treat me like this, please kill me right now. By the way, he has to be really desperate to ask for that. Please kill me right now. If you are pleased with me, don't let me see my misery anymore. Now last week, we were in Numbers chapter 1, and we learned that the tent of meeting was in the middle of the Israelite camp in the wilderness. The Ark of the Covenant was in that tent of meeting, and that's where God's presence was. The Levites camped around the tent of meeting so that they could separate the rest of Israel from the tent of meeting, so that none of the Israelites would accidentally wander too close to the tent of meeting and receive God's wrath. We talked about why God chose to separate himself from mankind, and we went all the way back to Genesis chapters 1 through 3, and we looked at why God separated himself from mankind. We remember when I stood up here, hold on a second. Remember when I stood up here and the room was dark and I lit a match, and we discovered what happens when light meets darkness. The light always overcomes the darkness. The light always overcomes the darkness. And so God, in his mercy, when mankind rebelled against him, when we got this darkness in our hearts, and by the way, you can't say that we don't have darkness in our hearts, because I will guarantee that everybody in this room said a little white lie at the least, probably much more than that. So there's this darkness in our hearts, but God has no darkness. When light meets darkness, light overcomes the darkness. So if God were to meet us, and his full and explicit presence were to meet us, we would perish. We would die. So God, in his mercy, separated himself from mankind. And then leading up into the Gospels, we have Jesus, who lived a perfect life, who was God in the flesh, and who died on a cross, had no darkness, but died anyway, so that he could substitute himself for us. And now we have the amazing opportunity to be with God again. That is so crazy. That's what we talked about last week. Now, for the Israelites in the wilderness, Jesus had not yet died for the sin of humanity. So God placed his presence in the tent of meeting, more specifically in the Ark of the Covenant, and placed the Levites between the tent of meeting and the rest of the Israelites, so that the Israelites would not wander too close and receive God's wrath. Remember that light always overcomes the darkness. Now after this, in the book of Numbers, the Israelites are given some commands. And in chapter 9, we learn that God was, even though there was darkness in the hearts of people, he was willing to lead his people. In chapter 9, we learn that a cloud led the Israelites by day and a pillar of fire by night. We also learn that at that point in time in Numbers chapter 9, that God's people obeyed him. They followed him. And then here in chapter 11, despite all that God has done, the people complained about the hardships they had in the wilderness. They complained about not having the right kind of food, even though they had donuts. And even Moses complained about all the stupid people he had to deal with. How many of you have ever just been like, oh, I'm so tired of dealing with these stupid people? Yeah, me too.
Every single class.
Every single Wednesday, oh no, I'm just kidding.
I take lower level classes.
So check this out. Check this out. Even Moses complained about all the stupid people he had to deal with. Moses was just like us, guys. He was a sinner just like the rest of us. Yes, sir.
Do you just do worship, or what's a way that you can help get? Because that has been a major problem.
Yeah.
With me lately.
We'll talk about that during group time. We'll have fun talking about that during group time.
We'll have fun.
All right. So the people complained because things weren't really going their way. The people complained because things weren't going their way. The very first thing I notice is that complaints are a sign of selfishness. When things aren't going my way, I have a tendency to complain about them. Regularly, when things aren't going people's way, people in general have a tendency to just complain about things when things aren't going their way. We live in a culture of complainers. We complain because we have homework. Homework. When our parents want us to do something that we don't want to do, we complain. When our schools just require way too much of us, we complain. When church isn't the way we want it to be, we complain. When we don't like our jobs, how many of you have a job in here? Nice. When you don't like your jobs, what do you do?
Complain.
Complain.
When you work the double.
Yeah, when you work the double all night long.
For $7.25.
Yeah.
Texas Roadhouse.
When we don't like food.
Off cap.
When we don't like food. When we don't like food. And when we don't like music, we complain. And we complain because we are selfish. And sadly, I think this is also where a lot of people make decisions from. Hold on. This is where I think a lot of people make decisions from is out of selfishness. Not only do we complain because we're selfish, but we make decisions in our selfishness, trying to make things to be the way that we desire them to be. Because of this, we do have to battle selfishness every day. We've already discovered that selfishness is not a good thing. We learned that selfishness is not a good thing, so we have to battle selfishness every day. If we remember that God has called the nation of Israel to shake the world. In Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, God shows up to Abraham and he says, Abraham, I'm going to bless all of the nations through you and through your offspring. Israel was called as a nation to shake the very foundation of the world. This generation of people that we see in Numbers chapter 11 were selfish and they complained against God, even though God had chosen them to shake the world. This generation, it seems, forsook their part in God's promise. They left it. They let it go. They didn't chase it. As we will learn later this month, Moses, who was also complaining here, Moses didn't even enter the promised land. Didn't even enter the land of Canaan. But this generation did not get to make a difference beyond themselves because they were concerned only with themselves. Let me say that again so you catch it. This generation of people in Numbers chapter 11, they didn't get to make a difference beyond themselves because they were only concerned with themselves. They didn't get to make a difference beyond themselves because they were only concerned with themselves. Here I learned that if I am going to make a difference beyond myself, how many of us want to just really rock this world and make a difference in this world? I know that I do. But if I am going to make a difference beyond myself, I simply cannot be selfish. I can't be focused on myself if I want the difference I make to be beyond me, outside of myself. Which means that in this world, I don't have to have my way. And when I do have to have my way, the only thing I do is cripple myself and make myself unable to make a difference beyond myself. We can also remember that we absolutely crave meaning in our lives. How many of you want your lives to mean something? I want my life to mean something. Now, not all of us know exactly what we want our lives to mean, but we want our lives to mean something. We want to pursue something that's worthwhile. We'll get it. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I was going to say, or make an impact.
Or make an impact, yeah. Have meaning, make an impact, make a difference, absolutely. You can remember that we absolutely crave meaning in our lives. This generation in Numbers chapter 11 only wanted to fulfill their own appetites. Now, I might ask this question. If we only care to fill our own appetites, and that is where we find our meaning, what happens when this earthly body dies, or when I am incapable of meeting my own appetite? For instance, if I live for money, what happens when I am broke?
You're sad. You're happy.
If I live for some cause, what happens when the cause is either accomplished or when it is stopped?
You've achieved your goal.
If I live for pleasure, what meaning is there when I am no longer pleased?
Emptiness.
The meaning I find for my life with any of these things then becomes meaningless and empty. If these are the things I pursue, things that are trivial, things that don't last forever, then when those things end, however they end, my life all of a sudden becomes meaningless, it becomes empty. And as I learned that selfishness is actually meaningless. So it doesn't profit me whatsoever to live a selfish life, which is kind of an odd statement. It doesn't profit me whatsoever to live a selfish life. If I want to have worthwhile meaning in my life, I must strive to be selfless. Now, when the people in Numbers chapter 11 were selfish, we read that God's anger actually burned against them. Quite literally, there was fire, and it burned the outskirts of the camp. God's anger actually burned against them. Let us not forget that it was God who first showed selflessness toward us. He covered the shame of Adam and Eve instead of killing them when they sinned against him in the garden. Abraham, the father of the faith, had an illegitimate son in his lust, and God blessed that son and grew a nation out of that son anyway. He rescued Israel from Egypt, and he provided them food in the wilderness even before they started complaining. When we are selfish, when we complain about the trivial things and only pay attention to the way we want things to be, it seems that God is actually angry with us. Yet, he still shows mercy. He is still selfless. He still shows great mercy toward us. So if we want to make a difference beyond ourselves, we must not be selfish. If we want to have worthwhile meaning in our lives, we must be selfless. By the way, selfish and selfless are opposites. Take the word selfish and everything that it means, and the opposite of that is selfless. I deny myself, I put myself aside, I consider the needs and the wants of others before I consider my own needs and wants, and I consider pleasing God before I consider pleasing myself. If we want to please God, we cannot be all about ourselves. Last week we learned that our story begins with Christ. It is through him that we are returned to a right relationship with God. This is where being a child of God begins. Today we learned that the next step is actually living to please God and to benefit others, to deny self. And really, that's what being a child of God is all about, loving God and loving people. And that really is the simple fact of the faith. It begins with Christ, and the next building block is selflessness.